You're listening to the Tom Green Podcast. Today on the show we have Bruce Hills, the president of Just for Laughs, Juste pour rire. That's the Montreal Comedy Festival that has been going on since 1983, and it is a showcase for all of what is great in comedy and stand-up comedy, and talent scouts and managers and studio heads and executives from the television and film business congregate there every year in July to see all the great new talent and also amazing, huge talent that comes and performs at the massive galas and performances. They have hundreds of performances going on every July. So we talk about what's going on this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it looks like the festival is going to be delayed, rescheduled. We'll ask Bruce how that's going to happen and what effect the pandemic is going to have on stand-up comedy in general. It's a good conversation, a great conversation, and for those of you interested in comedy and the Just for Laughs Festival, you're going to enjoy this. So let's just jump right into it. Here's Bruce Hills. Thanks, Bruce. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it. Lots going on in the world. How is everything in Montreal? First of all, how are you? How's the family? Is everyone safe and healthy up there during this pandemic?
Yes, we are. I mean, obviously a very strange time, and, every couple of days you have a different feeling about what the outcome is going to look like, or when maybe you'll get back to normal, but it seems to change all the time. But we're good. We're bunkered down here in our home. I get out daily for a long walk, staying, at least 15 yards from any human being, and clear my head, but I get right back to work trying to, deal with what we're dealing with and to make sure we're putting ourselves in the best position when we have a clearer understanding of what we're going through officially, so our festivals, tours, and production can continue.
Just for Laughs, not just a Canadian institution, but an international brand. I grew up in Ottawa. To all our American listeners and international listeners, I grew up in Ottawa, which is just down the road from Montreal. I always loved going to Montreal to the Just for Laughs Festival. And in the last 10 years or so, I've been coming down and performing there, which has always been such an honor and privilege to be able to do. You run the whole damn thing. What a huge responsibility. And now with this curveball that life has thrown us, where all of a sudden stand-up comedy is grinded to a halt. Who would ever thought that could even be possible? How are you adapting to all this, and how's the festival going to adapt to this crazy situation?
Well, listen, it's an ongoing piece of business. I mean, about 4 weeks ago, we had a real, good sense that July was not going to be at all viable. Again, our event takes place end of July. Well, actually, most of the month of July. The key piece is the end of July. So we made a decision to really evaluate very quickly our ability to move the event, to postpone the event and move it to October. And luckily, we were able to find the avails, and we had the artists that had, at least at that point, confirmed all were willing to move to October. So we punted our festival to September 29th, October 11th. And it will be, it'll be a tighter event. We're going to have to be very conscientious and about how many shows and pricing, because, we just have to be, aware of what we're walking into. But at this point, there's no guarantee of anything, but we feel, pretty good about October. And we planned accordingly.
Yeah, just so everyone who's listening who has been living under a rock, who may not know that Just for Laughs in Montreal is the biggest curated comedy festival in the world. Is that way to describe it? The most shows.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible event. All of the top comedians from all around the world come up to Montreal. I always feel such a sense of Canadian pride because Montreal is such a beautiful city. And when you go up to the festival, all the American comics are there and they're walking around Montreal and they're loving Montreal. How did Montreal and how did Canada and Just for Laughs become this hotbed for stand-up? It's been the number one comedy festival for stand-up for years now, for decades. How did that happen?
Well, listen, I think first and foremost, I think luckily, Tom, and you're a fantastic example of what can happen. Look, Canada, as much as we produce hockey players, we produce funny people. Look at the elite list that you're amongst there. You've got some of the biggest movie stars in the world. Mike Myers and Jim Carrey, and you've got Lorne Michaels. You've got SCTV, you've got the Schitt's Creek, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a great place to start from. And then we were very early in the process. We were lucky enough, I would say, to get in there just before the comedy boom, and then held on and really went for it. We made a decision early on that we were, at that time, the biggest comedy event in the world. And as we grew, we really paid a lot of attention to what could we do to be meaningful, not only to put shows up in front of people that are great and for broadcasters and sponsors and government, but what could we do to be a meaningful piece of business for the comedians? Because the key thing that drives us is our relationship with the comics. And that not only do they have a lot of fun, but can we play a meaningful place in the launch of their career? And then, if you're, as an example, Kevin Hart, who came to the festival to do our New Faces show, maybe 20 years ago, 18 years ago or so, and launched to, to become one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah.
We just wanted to stay meaningful in his life at every point along the way. At a certain point, he didn't need us anymore, no question. But what can we do to stay in his life? So, we're producing his arena tour. We're doing his arena show. We're partners on content. Wherever we can, Tom, we try to stay in the lives of comics. Comics drive the event. If the comics are excited about being in Montreal like you are, seeing the beautiful cities, seeing comics from two languages performing on two different stages, really the Olympics of comedy. You and as a Canadian, I think it's something that you walk around the event feeling you really have an important place in comedy, and hopefully you feel the same way about your role at JFL.
Must be so cool for you, because how long have you been doing the festival? Over 20 years, right?
Just under 35, sir.
Wow. Okay. Time flies. Because I remember when you came to my little public access show in Ottawa before MTV 25 years ago.
Yep.
And I remember meeting you, and I remember talking about my show and being so excited to be talking to you because you were from Just for Laughs. And I grew up watching Just for Laughs, the television prank stuff on TV too, all the man on the street pranks, which was definitely something that, that kind of comedy really inspired me, because I, of course, loved going out in the street and doing pranks too. So, but it must be so cool for you to work with Kevin Hart when he's just coming up, and then here all of these comedians years later who have gone on to these huge things. What about the comedians who haven't kind of exploded yet and who rely on stand-up comedy as their income, and now with comedy stopped? I understand you're doing something, benefit of some sort, or a fundraiser for young comedians who are or for comedians who are affected by this pandemic shutdown.
Yeah, well, we're trying to help. It's an initiative that we're supporting. It's called the Emergency Relief Fund for Canadian Comics, and anyone in Canada or elsewhere wants to support, they can go to CanadianStandUp.ca, and there's a GoFundMe campaign that's going to help support comics. As you know very well, Tom, you have different income streams, you have an established career, but some people rely entirely on the thing that shut down.
Yeah.
And that's happening all over the world. Comedy Gives Back in the U.S. is doing an incredible job. They raised $350,000 US 2 weekends ago.
Yeah,
I was distribute.
I did. I was involved with that broadcast for Laugh Aid, and that was a great event. Yeah. Yeah.
So then we saw, $350,000 being raised for Americans, and we sniffed around to try to figure out what could we support, because we didn't want to put ourselves in the middle of distributing funds, and we just thought that wasn't our place. What our place is we made a sizable donation, but we also are getting the word out, and I'm getting the word out to my famous friends that might not be right in Canada anymore, might be living in Canada anymore, to see if they were willing to support, and the networks that are in this country. So if anyone has, I know there's a lot of people knocking on your door for a donation these days, and there's so many worthy causes. So I don't want to compete with anyone. I just want to make sure people are aware of this situation, and if they would like to support, they know how to.
It's a great thing you're doing. What have comedians that you've talked to been saying? How have they been expressing their fears and frustrations about this whole situation?
Well, listen, I on every night, I think after dinner, I'd get on and start texting people, or like I did with you, DMing you on Twitter, just to check in, and they're just jumping to go. It's like a wild dog in a cage. It's like the average comic, of course, there's the economics of it. Let's not underestimate that. But to a lot of people, including some of the famous people I've gone back and forth with, they just want to get going.
Yeah.
I want to get on stage. I want to get back. I want to get back in front of my audience. They were working on a new show and now they're stalled.
Yeah.
So I think the frustration of being locked up is really a big piece. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do online, what's going to work, what's going to, is there a platform or a way to go about it that's better than another? I mean, in our case, we're trying to figure that out to the best of our ability. We're doing trials on Facebook and YouTube and an Instagram story. We now do a show every Friday night. I think our next one's May 8th. Well, not every Friday, but most Fridays, on Facebook Live on our page, JFL, where the Sklar brothers introduce a handful of comedians that will, have a chat with them and do stand-up. We've learned a lot over the first 3 shows to, where we had made our mistakes, but we're trying to do first and foremost something where comics can come on and, perform. The next step is, can we figure out a way for them to be compensated? Because we're not making any money off it. And we would like at least to see if there's a way that starting May 8th that artists can be paid. So we're looking at different apps that offer donation vehicles, which we are going to apply to our next show. So at least if there's 5,000 people watching, maybe 500 of them will donate so the artist on the show can receive some compensation.
Yeah.
So trying anything we can, the TV department is working full force. Tom, what can we do under these conditions? The quarantine-friendly pitches that we're putting in front of networks and streamers. I think we've probably had 8 meetings so far, pitching different shows that can be done under the current situation. Not only just because we're in business to, we want to survive and we wanted to make some money here, but we also want to employ comedians.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win. My francophone and my French counterparts, because as I mentioned, our festival is French and English. They're launching the.
Je parle français.
Tu parles français, Tom?
Oui, je parle français.
Oui, très bien, très bien.
Parfait.
They're launching the Ha 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 Festival late May, where they're going to do a 4-day online comedy festival with all in French, made all by Quebec artists, and they're going to try to figure out that riddle. I think so far what I've seen is very impressive. So you know what? Every day trying to do something. Our YouTube channels, both gags and stand-up, are rocking. We have our own channel on Sirius XM, JFL Canada. There's lots of Just for Laughs throughout the universe, but we're just doing our best to hopefully put a smile on people's faces and try to be able to be ready for what we're walking into. Because, Tom, you and I both know we don't know what the end of 20 looks like. For all intents and purposes, we don't know what 21 looks like. So let's, try to be as creative as humanly possible, as nimble as humanly possible, and be able to react to what the conditions are and do what we do, produce comedy, make people laugh, and work with some of the best comics in the business.
It's amazing that we are living in this time where there is the technology to even do something like that. It's there's web streaming, the fact that we're able to go online and do podcasts, and like you said, the Sklar brothers, who are amazing, are doing something with you. They're going to do. There's a thing about stand-up though, obviously we know this, but for our listeners, when you're a performer and you're up in front of a live audience and you feel them and you feel the energy of the crowd and you see them sitting in front of you and there's that real-time human interaction, there's nothing like it in the world. And it's an incredible adrenaline rush for a comedian. And it's just sort of an amazing and strange thing that has stopped for the first time in our lifetime. Do you think that when that starts up again, when we are given the go-ahead to go back out to the clubs, do you think that that's just going to be like you said, people chomping at the bit to get back out? And is it going to change? Is comedy going to change when things restart because of this?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, and I want to add one additional element to what you said that I think is a challenge right now. But back to when it gets back to normal, whatever the new normal is, I think people, if they feel safe, are going to be, and again, not too economically challenged, because that's another big piece, Tom. I think we all going to have to be modest with our expectations when we get back out there.
Yep.
And price accordingly and be, just be aware. I think it's going to be magical. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it. When is it? Is it October in Montreal? Is it another day? Whenever it happens, I think it's going to be magical. I think it's going to be, to be quite honest, it's going to be like seeing your first NBA game after this is all cleared up. But I think in the case of the situation with comedy, I think both sides of the equation, the artist and the audience, the comic and the audience, are just going to be chomping at the bit to do it, as long as they feel safe and in a good place. Because the last thing you want is put people in a place where they don't feel like their health is protected.
Everybody needs
out of our control.
People need to have a laugh right now. Comedy, the best comedy always comes from tragedy, and we've just gone through this collective tragedy as an entire world for the first time, really, in our lifetime, that we've gone through a worldwide tragedy, everyone experiencing this at the same time. I've talked to a lot of comedians who are feeling that there's a different kind of energy in the air right now. I talked to Dane Cook on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's talking about how online the audiences and the positive energy is palatable, that people are supporting one another. And I think that when we get back on stage and people come out and celebrate in a room together, there's going to be this collective sigh of relief. I think people will probably be laughing harder than they've ever laughed in their lives. And I look forward to that, and I can't wait to see that in Montreal.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. I agree, and I hope, and I hope, listen, that just as a society, we learn something from this, and we can not just go right back to exactly the way that we were treating this world and each other. But that remains to be seen.
Bruce, I thank you for calling. I know you're very busy. I can't wait to come up to the festival in October and have a beer and a laugh with you at the Hyatt Bar. And the
DoubleTree now, sir.
Oh yeah, is it? It's a DoubleTree. Okay, good.
They just changed that.
All right.
You get the free. Love to see you, my friend.
You get the free cookie when you check in. It'll remind me of just what it's like of being on the road.
Exactly.
I live in DoubleTrees.
Exactly.
So great, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Okay. Thanks very much. All the best.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Thank you for listening, everybody. What a wild week it's been, by the way. I had a great appearance on Joe Rogan. His podcast is obviously incredible, the #1 podcast on the planet. And we had a great time. I really, really want to thank Joe here on my podcast for having me on. He was incredibly gracious with his praise and support for my early Webovision work. Webvision. It's a kind of good name for it too, I guess. It's amazing going over there and doing that show. I'm really excited to have done it and hope to go back again soon, because man, it's just been amazing the amount of new people that have been checking out my Instagram. I think I had 10,000 new followers on Instagram in one day after the show aired. And it was a really, really fun broadcast, 3.5 hours long. We just talked about everything and anything, and it was high energy all the way through, super funny. I like to watch it on YouTube. I actually sat back and watched the show on YouTube, and I'd like to ask all of you to go check it out on YouTube. Go watch it on Joe Rogan's YouTube channel. Put it up on your big screen. Sit back, pour yourself a drink if you drink. Pour yourself a cup of coffee if you don't drink. If you don't drink coffee, pour yourself a glass of water, but that doesn't sound as much fun, but whatever. To each his own. And check out the show. It's a lot of fun. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Subscribe to this podcast right here and everywhere you listen to podcasts. And please tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate it. The Tom Green Podcast, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. That's what this is. The cameras are coming soon. We're going to be streaming with video to my YouTube channel very soon, and some exciting things to announce. I love you all. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Be safe.